Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukraine and sometimes Russia and China show on Pod TV. And I think very soon we will include Israel to that because it seems to me that Ukraine and Israel fighting the same enemies are in the same boat. But we'll talk about it. Right now, we are being joined by Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here.
Great to have you. And Ivan Kucherenko from Kiev, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hi, Jonathan. Nice to be here as well.
Great to have you. And by the way, I would like to ask you if you have any video for us to look.
Yeah, I have video, but give me just a moment because
Okay.
I wanted to show you today one video, but when you announced that we soon will have to rename our show to Israel as well, I decided to show you another one, and I need to find it because it's not so easy to quickly to find this video. So as soon as I will,
No, take your time. In the meantime, I would like to ask Jonathan. Speaking about
my grade.
No, listen. Speaking about getting Israel in our show, what I'm afraid of that very soon, beside Israel, we will have to include Taiwan, North and South Korea, and there are so many now hot spots in the world being developed. We are going back in 1939, and so if
we may have to rename this show "World Conflicts Are Us."
Yeah, that's right. And I'll tell you, it's so far the same as England fought Germans in 1939 alone. That what Ukraine did for the last year and a half or more. They were single-handedly, with help, although from NATO and United States, but they single-handedly fought with Russia, which at that time was considered second strongest army in the world. Now
their standing has gone down quite a bit since then.
They're still second strongest army in Ukraine, though.
Yeah.
So, already not in Russia because Wagner Group they're destroyed after they destroyed the first strongest army in Russia, Wagner Group. Then they became the Russian army became most powerful army in Russia, but not in Ukraine, and definitely not in the world. I've found that video, so we can play it and see how similar this war is.
I agree that violence has to be stopped, but by whom? How? Any idea, Ivan?
Unfortunately, no Ronald Reagan and no Winston Churchill are amongst the most powerful Western politicians, and we already are seeing how this slow decision making of Western countries or United States, how it leads to such situations like arranged in Israel. Several sources confirm that Russia and Iran are responsible for preparing this terroristic attack on Israel by Hamas, and they definitely supplied them with the weapons. Ukrainian military intelligence warned the Western officials and the people that Russian officials, Russian army, transferred captured Western weapons and ammunition to the Hamas in order to convince that Ukrainians are selling those weapons which they have been provided by Western countries to the terrorists. And luckily, our military intelligence intercepted their plans, and they've announced about these plans in public and warned that such kind of provocation is being prepared by Russians. And I'm not sure if we were able to prevent this conflict in Israel, but definitely if Russia was defeated in Ukraine before that, with greater support of Western countries, of course, then probably they will not be able to assist in this conflict, to assist Hamas terrorists. Because in this case, Russia would be busy by their own internal problems. We remember that why Russia cannot allow themselves to be defeated in Ukraine, because in this case the internal problems in Russia will blow up, and Russia will be collapsed in their internal conflicts between different parts of elite, between different military commanders, between different regions of Russia, like the Caucasian region, like the Tatarstan and others, which are being held in Russia only by power. And our problem is that the United States are afraid of such future when Russia will be defeated and when Russia will be collapsed, because it can lead to not predictable consequences in future, like they were afraid when Soviet Union collapsed. The United States wanted to weaken Soviet Union, but they didn't want Soviet Union to collapse, and it was a big surprise, and for United States and for other countries. And the same situation is now in Russia, but Russia will collapse. It's just a matter of time, as Russian Empire collapsed in the beginning of the 20th century, and it led to the loss of their territories. Some countries like Poland, which was a part of Russian Empire, or Baltic countries, or some Balkan countries became free. The same situation was when Soviet Union collapsed, and the same situation will be when Russian Federation, or so-called Russian Federation, will collapse. Also, it will lead to fragmentation of Russia to many different countries, and this process is immutable. It will appear sooner or later. But as with delaying this process, we allow Russia to interfere and to assist in different, and to provoke different conflicts in the world, like the intervention of Hamas and the attack of Hamas on Israel.
Jonathan, would you agree that one reason that the United States just reacting to what's happening in the world, but it doesn't have its own policy. It's not aggressively expanding US with $1 trillion or almost $1 trillion military budget. If you are all trying to do is to be passive and wait until either Canada or Mexico will attack United States, it's a fraud. You don't need $1 trillion budget to fight Canada or Mexico, or both of them at the same time. Can you imagine that Canada and Mexico, they agreed to attack US together the same day, same hour? Oh my God, what a tragedy. You don't need $1 trillion budget to fight Canada and Mexico. So your interests are lying elsewhere. So you have active the a pro-American, pro-Western policy around the world, and you are trying to kill very early all these uprisings, whether it's Hamas or North Korea or both of them or three of them. Now, Russia is obviously behind everything, because the only way Russia can exist, it's a high oil prices, and of course all these fights around the world contribute to oil prices rising. Now, the easiest way to put Russia on its knees if oil prices for some reason would collapse. If they would collapse down to $30, $40 a barrel, which they were about 4 years ago, if they will go to that level, there is no reason for Russia as the whole country, one landmass, to exist. The reason that it's existed because the center is mercilessly taking all oil revenue from all republics and all the region of the countries in the center to itself, and it controls it. But if the oil is $30, $40 a barrel, there is no reason, even it's unsupportable infrastructure to collect all the money from all over the place. But there's no money because the oil is $30 a barrel, so nobody needs it anymore. So there is no reason for Russia to exist together. Speaking about America, do you think, Jonathan, maybe it has to do with the aging of population, aging of America? Look at our president of America. Start from himself. How dare he is, when everything was approved to take to Ukraine the ATACMS, the F-16s, everything and more, and he is sitting on it. Now all world is going almost on the verge of explosion, but he sits on it. Okay, he gets a glass of hot milk in the morning and maybe some kasha, and then no, I'm not going to allow. Okay, maybe tomorrow. Come on, this is people like that. You cannot power anymore. It's a joke. What's your opinion?
Well, I would agree for one thing that with Ivan, that Russia's interest is in sowing chaos among its opponents, and essentially, and that because of their concept of security, bezopasnost, without danger, means that in order for Russia to be secure in its own perception, that its neighbors and opponents must be made to feel insecure, or off balance, or weakened, or at best, suppressed, or made prostrate to vis-a-vis their opponents. And the other thing is, the key to this, however, is countering Russia, is one, obviously, to defeat them operationally on the battlefield, which Ukraine is in the process of doing, exceeding the expectations of the Western powers. But also, we must be prepared to restore the economic stability of both Ukraine and the Western powers to the greatest extent possible. And this, we have a great deal of military power, but we aren't really that good at, because we don't seem to have a clear overarching foreign policy in the sense that we had during the Cold War. At least during the Cold War, both political parties could subscribe to the grand strategy of containment and use that as a grand strategic framework within which to oppose the Soviet Union. Right now, the United States doesn't really have it doesn't really have a grand strategic framework, and it shows in the reaction to, now it's more reflexive. We support Israel because we have a large constituency in the United States, certainly, that supports the existence of Israel. And in Ukraine, we have our NATO allies who see it in their best interest to support Ukraine in its independence. But the real key, as I've stated several times before, is first we defeat Russia militarily on the battlefield in Ukraine. And then once we achieve the realistic objective of an armistice, a ceasefire, then we bilaterally support Ukraine's economic recovery and its military buildup to the point where it can serve as a defensive bulwark for NATO in the East, and deter as much as possible a Russian resurgence or another war further in the future. What we would have to do also, as I've also suggested, is that U.S. and NATO, and integrate Ukraine in it to the greatest extent possible, create a global ballistic missile defense system, which would include an upgrade of the U.S. Space Force to be able to participate in a global ballistic missile defense system that would neutralize the one thing that Russia considers makes it a great power. Neutralize their nuclear missile arsenal, and they are essentially castrated.
Jonathan, you remember debates between Obama going in the second term with Mitt Romney. And Mitt Romney was asked who is, in his opinion, the major foe of the United States. And his answer was Russia. And Obama was laughing and saying, come on, Russia, it was already, they lost Cold War, there was nothing. China is the biggest foe of the United States. Except one thing, China, for all its rights and wrongs, they are building the best way they can their economy. And they are, at least so far, playing by international rules. Whereas Russia is going into every hole where it can challenge United States and NATO and the West. It creates instability around the world all the time, every time, and there is unavoidable confrontation with United States and NATO. Why? Take two scenarios. One, Russia is losing the war against Ukraine. So they will unleash maybe nuclear arsenal, maybe something else. They will definitely do something. Now, if they win the war against Ukraine, God forbid, they will go to attack Poland and Baltic countries and anybody else in Europe. What that means? Again, United States will be involved. So don't they understand that they cannot hide behind Republicans, behind Trump, behind Biden, behind this and that? It's impossible. Look at how strongly the United States reacts of what's happened in Israel. Except Biden, everybody who is who in America is in Israel right now. It's Secretary Blinken, it's General Austin, it's enormous supporting staff, correspondents, if you take CNN, all leading correspondents are there on the ground, including Aaron Burnett, including what's his name, Anderson Cooper, and just almost anybody, whoever is there. Ukraine is a different story. Ukraine, you're saying that, okay, there is a big lobby of Israelis or Jewish people in the United States. But Ukrainian lobby is no less. There are a lot of Ukrainians live in United States.
Oh, yes.
And so why, unlike Jewish Americans, Ukrainian Americans are being ignored, and so approaches, let's stop helping Ukraine. We don't want to help anymore. We want to reduce, we want to send inspectors to check everything or so on. Yes, you can send inspectors. And they sent inspectors. And what did they find? Nothing. Everything was regularly appropriated and accounted for. They couldn't find nothing. So, what, Jonathan? What's your opinion on the difference?
I was waiting for the grenade. That's a second. Oh, here, let me take that grenade.
That's the easiest one.
Yeah, that's the easiest one. Yeah. There is. Again, I simply point back to the fact that we do not have at this point in the administration, we do not have a coherent, consistent overall foreign policy strategy, and that lack of foresight and planning is showing itself. And in our ad hoc response, we're treating each crisis as a separate problem in and of itself, instead of trying to respond to it with an overall coherent and rational strategy. And and that has been a consistent weakness of American foreign policy over the past several decades, since the end of the Cold War. I mean, in a sense, we had an advantage during the Cold War because we had that consistent grand strategy that both political parties were willing to adhere to. And that was a huge advantage for the West. And it does not occur that often. And so now we're in this post-Cold War period where for a while the United States was the sole real superpower, and in many respects it still is. So, but you now have a situation in which the United States is sort of stumbling through and trying to handle each crisis as it occurs, and is also trying to cope with the results, with the consequences of their own actions in terms of economics, with having built up between the two political parties up a $32 trillion national debt. I mean, sooner or later, that is it, and it's starting to show its effects now, I would argue. But that is going to have enormous consequences for decades to come, even after this war is concluded, and assuming that we conclude it successfully on the part of Ukraine, so that Ukraine can build up and recover. There are going to be major consequences to pay for the United States and the West in the coming decades. And Henry Kissinger had warned at the end of the Cold War that we should not assume that Russia is forever going to be, irrelevant. So he had warned back in the early 90s. I mean, he was very prophetic. He said sooner or later that Russia will begin to reassert itself simply because of the size of its population and its resources. It will begin to exploit and then try to reassert itself in world affairs. And the fact that they are leaning very heavily on the fact that they have technically the world's largest nuclear arsenal, but it's not by an overwhelming margin. And the combined nuclear arsenals of the United States and the West are larger than those of Russia to a considerable degree. So again, I argue the key is you must respond asymmetrically. Асимметрическая.
That's right. Конечно и правильно. Jonathan, but I'd like to ask you, Kissinger is a Republican. How come?
Yeah, quite a long time, actually.
For the last 200 years.
Yeah.
No,
he only reached the first century, 100.
But let me ask you this. How come he, being so influential person, especially among Republicans, couldn't help Bush Sr. explaining the same thing what you just said, to urge him to get nuclear arms out of Russia? Not only that did not happen, they actually provided even further nuclear arsenal from Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus, perhaps. Doesn't make any sense, Jonathan. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it certainly didn't make any sense in retrospect. Yeah. And I had written at the time in an article in Strategic Review in 1994, an article on Ukraine, the aspiring nuclear power, that my conclusion was, absent decisive intervention by the West, we would soon have to confront the specter of either increased nuclear proliferation, in other words, more nuclear powers, or that would be the Scylla, to use from the Iliad and the Odyssey, the Scylla of increased nuclear proliferation or the Charybdis of a Russian-Ukrainian war.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
I
very
recognize
good.
that as a real possibility. But now, of course, nobody listened to me at the time. Well, why would they? But in any case, now we are confronted with this Russian-Ukrainian war, with its potential for uh, a real tragedy if we allow Russia to defeat Ukraine or hand them a political victory which they have not earned on the battlefield and do not deserve to earn on the battlefield. Unless we can support Ukraine to the extent where we can defeat them operationally and force the Russians to accept an armistice, a ceasefire, we are going to be paying an even larger price here in the near future.
I would like to actually mention when at the beginning of the program I mentioned that Ukraine and Israel are in the same boat. And I was looking why there was no real cooperation between Israel and Ukraine so far. And you know what I've discovered? A few very interesting things. First of all, Israel always provided humanitarian help to Ukraine, and their quite advanced medical personnel was and still available to help Ukrainians, wounded people, and it's still going on. Then something else came just around a couple of days ago. There is an arsenal of American weapons and ammunition in Israel, which is it belongs to American, but it's available for Israelis use anytime, anywhere they need it. So a couple of days ago, when they opened that arsenal, there was nothing. Zero weapons, zero ammunition. It was all transferred to Ukraine. So, although it's kind of a Israel was always afraid to help openly to Ukraine because at the time they saw that they didn't want to alienate Putin because Putin is friends with Iran, and Iran is obviously a foe of Israel and soon to have nuclear weapons. So Israel was very quiet about all this. But I think its politics will be changed. Official politics, I'm talking about. Because if you remember, there are a lot of pictures of Netanyahu with Putin. And Netanyahu was friends with Trump. Trump is a great admirer of Putin and vice versa. So this is kind of a triumvirate of Trump, Putin, and Netanyahu. Oh, great picture. Now, where is that picture today? Putin is a war criminal. Trump is soon to be criminal and indicted
No comment.
91 points. Okay, listen, I understand there is an American judicial system which is not equipped with the people like Trump. And we are witnessing that. It just cannot deal with people like Trump. So, of course, Trump will be unscathed. He will never be convicted of anything. He will continue to run. He will become second president. Then he will change rules. He will become forever president. And we'll see what's going to happen with all that, unless he'll die sooner or later. Same thing with Putin. And Netanyahu, I think as soon as the war is over, I think Netanyahu will be completely dislodged from his position. Ivan, what's your opinion? How Ukrainians are supporting Israel of what's happened
Back
there?
to you, Ivan.
Actually, I think that Ukraine is one of few countries in the world who really understands the Israel and the feelings of people of Israel when they just woke up one morning and understood that they are being attacked and that this is not just a war, but this is first of all terroristic attack on the country, and we've seen these all those horrible videos and photos from the Israel, and for us it was just a deja vu Yeah, and from one side, we really understand the pain of Israel, and we feel the same. From other side, we're a little bit upset about it, because when war started in Ukraine, very not a long time passed since most of the countries started to call this war, and now not all countries already are strong enough to claim that this is war. They call it conflict. Russia says that it's a special military operation. Russian allies say that it's some kind of conflict in Ukraine. China says that it's conflict in Ukraine, and but the wording is important, and we see that with the situation in Israel, there were no concerns in calling this a war. Because it was just an act of war from Hamas to Israel, and Israel claimed that this is not just a terroristic attack on us, this is war. And of course, we understand that Israel should be assisted in this situation as much as possible in order to finish this war, and we see that they are really they're really going to punish Hamas and to arrange this land operation in Sector Gaza in order to revenge, in order to prevent the further provokes from the Hamas and further attacks on Israel. And they're assisted by all means. They are given the military planes, they're given missiles, and no one doubts that Israel will launch them on density populated region of Sector Gaza, because Sector Gaza, the size of Sector Gaza is smaller than the size of Kharkiv city in the eastern part of Ukraine. The whole Sector Gaza with 2 million of people and those multi-story apartment buildings, it's smaller than one city of Kharkiv in the eastern part of Ukraine. And no one is cares that they will launch these missiles in order to destroy the Hamas bases. And in case of Ukraine, there is a lot of doubts whether those missiles, whether those long-range weapons will provoke Russia, and what Russia will do, and all that stuff. And no one cares that this attack of Israel on Sector Gaza in their revenge will provoke Iran, or they will provoke Syria, or they will provoke Libya, and it will also lead to a huge war in the Middle East. But we have one country which is a beneficiary of this war in Middle East, and we already discussed it. Any conflict in the Middle East will lead to increase prices on oil, and if prices on oil will be increased, the Russia will achieve more income for trading of their oil. So they're beneficiary of this conflict in any way, and it's obvious just in terms of money, not even in terms that this conflict brings away attention of United States and some other partners from Ukraine to Israel, and that United States have to assist not only Ukraine but also Israel in this conflict. But they also are beneficiary in that that they will be able to earn more money. They will pay this money to their soldiers. They will buy all necessary equipment, not directly, but via some proxy countries which assist them with this so-called parallel import. They will create rockets. Then they will launch these rockets on Ukraine. Ukraine will ask for anti-air defense systems in order to intercept these rockets, and this will long for a very long period of time in order if it will not be speeded enough. And so there is only way to speed this process and to stop Russia, just not to hesitate and to give all necessary weapons to Ukraine, including ATACMS missiles, including long-range missiles, including fighter jets, including more Abrams tanks and more weapons, and Ukraine will be able to stop Russia. They have great resources for people, and they definitely can wage this war for several years at last, because they have very high people potential in Russia. But they have problems with ammunition. They have problems with weapons. They are not be able to produce the weapons and the military vehicles with higher speed than they are being destroyed in Ukraine. And when they will not be able to produce, they will not be able to enforce their soldiers with the vehicles to support them with artillery, then they will have to leave occupied territories of Ukraine, because they will be just destroyed.
I think Ukrainians have to continue development of joint ventures with the Western community to start building their own ammunition. It's needed regardless of outcome of this war, or even if Ukrainians will win decisively. That's not the end of Russia. Russia can attack 2 years from now, 5 years from now. You see, with a neighbor like this, that's what Israel did several years ago. They created their war machine. They're building arguably one of the best defense systems in the world. And Israel is a tiny country. At that, a few years ago, there were a population of 5, maybe 6 million people. So now it's 8, maybe 9 million people, which includes, by the way, 2 million Arabs who live in Israel, working in Israel, have family, raising families, or so on. There's no problem with these families in Israel. The problem is when, actually I was corrected when I called this Hamas terrorist, and someone corrected me and said, sorry, they're not terrorists, they're freedom fighters. And I asked them, would they consider that the greatest Palestinian freedom fighter in the world for all times was Yasser Arafat? Said, yeah, he was a great freedom fighter. Okay. Then I remember when in the year 2004, he passed away. For 1 month, it hasn't been announced that he's passed away, because his widow and relatives and other people involved, they were dividing a fortune of $2 billion. So I would agree, yes, he was the most successful freedom fighter in the world. I cannot add anything to that.
In terms of earning money.
Instead, how much money he amassed. So
making a living.
So let me ask you, if Hamas wouldn't receive money from Qatar, from Iran, by the way, a lot of fighters were trained by Wagner Group. So if not that, well, of course, Putin would say, Wagner Group, I have nothing to do with this organization. It's a private organization. At the same time, when Prigozhin uprising was there in June, He said, yes, we do finance Wagner. So he cannot say at the same time that, yes, we finance Wagner, and say Wagner is a private organization, we have nothing to do with that. What a liar. Incredible. But anyway, I would like to thank you both for participating in today's program. Hopefully we'll have a good weekend, and we'll see you Tuesday, same place, same time. Bye, everybody. Thank you.